Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map, and this is another episode in my Inspired Tarot Map series. And today I'm hosting April Miller McMurtry. Hi, April.
Hi, Kasia.
April is the founder of The Moon is My Calendar, which you guys might know, a visual artist, teacher, a mother, and something that sounds so beautiful, a lunar guide. I loved it. So April, we have known each other for a while now. I first heard about you when I did course with Chris N, and you were a guest speaker and you gave like a little lecture about lunar cycles. And then kind of you came back into the radar when I got together with Leticia, with Leti Luna on Instagram. And yeah, I just always admired your work. So I'm really happy that you agreed to be a guest and to share a little bit of the lunar magic with us. So usually, April, I start with asking people about ancestry, just to get to know, your lineage a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit where you come from? Who has your back?
Who's got my back? I know, like, there's pictures of some of the women. Both my grandmothers were first generation, born in the United States. My granny, who just passed away in last December, who I feel like is very still present. Her lineage is Irish Catholic. And I actually, I'm like looking around I just inherited her rosaries.
Oh.
And so I have, actually, this is one that I'm wearing of hers. So that's been a process of connecting with her, even though she left the church. She was, did a lot of work in the community and just through like pure love and service. So that's my granny. And I named my daughter after her. And then my other grandmother, both her parents were from England, and she grew up in Hawaii and then came to the mainland, and we all congregated, ended up in California. So a lot of different areas throughout Europe. Even though as a young person, I spent a lot of time and travel throughout Latin America, and learned Spanish and ended up becoming a Spanish teacher. And felt just a lot of at-homeness in places that I've lived and studied throughout Mexico, but even throughout the Caribbean. I feel very much that California, growing up, I think in the Bay Area and having a sense of the land and the landscape and this place where I'm raising my daughters too. So just acknowledging that I am on unceded land of the Ohlone, Lisan people, and many other tribes, so many tribes throughout California. But just learning the ways to honor the land and the water in the place where I am and live now.
Cool. Thank you, April, for sharing. So I have a bit of a cheeky question. So I wanted to ask, knowing that you consciously, follow the lunar cycles and the moon, if it's easy to follow a different time in a linear world. So we follow the month after month, very straight line kind of calendars, whereas yours around. And it's a little bit different. So my question basically is, how is your time perspective, and has it changed since you started following the cyclical time together with the moon?
Mm-hmm. Such a good question, because now I feel like they're very parallel. I can kind of tune into the grid and the structure and know that that's there, but it's become a lot more kind of secondary. And to see time in a circle was such a relief. I think something in my system to just, that's what made sense. I think with linear time and growing up, I was always behind. I was almost always just felt like I was late or trying to catch up with something that even with trying to learn about history and seeing it in this timeline. And I would like stare at the line and be like, this doesn't make sense at all. I can't, I remember just not being able to wrap my mind around something moving in a straight line. And so seeing time in a circular calendar, I mean, there's many forms of time being presented in a circular way throughout the world, many different cultures visualizing and understanding that. So there's something that I think for myself and for many people, and especially beginning to work with a circular calendar, that just something relaxes, like, oh, something in me knows that this is truly the movement of time is in circles and cycles and spirals, that 3-dimensional spiral. So yeah, now I'm able to locate myself more within time because I am seeing it in a way that makes sense with the movement and the motion and the orbits of everything. So yeah, that combined with other things, some of the personal practices of locating myself in time and then being able to show up on time. And not always. I mean, there's time where that kind of just floats and is different, but even my experience of time, I mentioned just being in other countries and being in other places. I feel like that was very much informed this other time outside, especially of the US, and a way more like every minute where money is time, and that relationship with time is like with capitalism, like so married together. To be in other places where that's not the case, there's another feeling of time and life.
And it's interesting to see in nature also, the spiral everywhere, and like in cosmos or like in the skies, how the stars form. It's kind of like really, there is something, I think, instinctual maybe that we somehow on some level recognize. And also I thought when you were talking about the history, how sometimes the consequence of something comes like so much later. But I think if you did the around kind of like a cyclical time, it's much easier to see because maybe they would catch up at some point, whereas in the linear, you're like, you forgot. That's how I tend to actually explain often how tarot or astrology works, especially when we speak about past lives. And I always say I don't know if past lives exist because, I don't think you can prove any of this. I believe they do, but I don't know. And how sometimes, you can carry through maybe certain motives or certain things from past lives into this life that you still may be working on. But in some way you made then the consequence of what you may be experiencing right now, but what happened in the past life, let's say, or in the past even, doesn't necessarily have to be past life, but like maybe in the past, we often don't connect the dots. So we think like, that fate got us and something like is out to get us. But I think like in some way we make happen, like we make life happen. We co-creators, okay? We co-creators of life. And I think often we make something happen. We don't think of these consequences that come later on in the linear time, but it is a consequence that maybe we have to live through, and that's why that feels so fated, or that we have to experience because we've already chosen that, at this particular point in time. And I think sometimes that like just makes sense to me to explain certain things that seem fated, but don't necessarily have to be that there is, the big guy in sky sitting there and throwing lightnings at you. Ooh, you were bad. Pay for it now. So I think like somehow we co-create, but it's interesting that with time, connecting the dots with the linear time, you kind of lose the plot at some point because it seemed to be so far away.
Yeah. Losing the plot, I feel like that is a part of, and creating this tool for that self-study is like losing the plot of forgetting like, oh wait, I've been here before. in another timeline or time cycle, those themes keep showing up. And so now I have, what is this? I'm just going to show, this is the 2020.
Yeah.
So the first edition was published for the winter solstice in 2014. So for the 2015 year. So 5 years. So 5 years of lunar cycles, keeping the practice, a daily practice with it. And now being able to see the themes that come up and the themes that show up. There is that through line or that thread or that piece that connects back to, oh, this is the evolving story. This is the next chapter of the story that is ongoing. And often what I see too is that it's not like one lesson is learned and then that's, sometimes it's like, this is the time I'm learning this lesson and I'm not going to learn it again. But most of the time,
yeah,
wants to take, just really wanting to learn and sort of fulfill those things that whatever part of ourselves needs to learn in this lifetime.
Yeah,
and this
I agree.
tool, having a place to do that where there isn't the kind of, where it's a very non-judgmental space. I feel like that is the energy of the moon, is so unconditionally loving and so holding and accepting, and so like this too shall pass, this is a phase and things will come back around, almost like you will get another chance. So that feeling of I messed up again, or I did that thing again, or I'm, the ways that we can be hard on ourselves when we're really trying to be aware and trying to like be our best self. Having this practice, I think, has really helped with that. Like, here was my best attempt, my best effort and try to address this or work with this lesson or this theme or motif.
And I think that's a beautiful lesson for many of us, because I think we really get caught up. Doesn't matter if you a male or a female or however you consider yourself to be, because of the general system that we live in. It's very do, like we don't really get this sense of like, okay, the work, the break, this natural cycle of nature that seems to grow and die, and like it seems hard. And I can say for myself, like, and my friends who maybe watch it, like, they can probably laugh, because I find it so hard, because I'm so fiery and so airy and like instinctively and naturally really drawn to, expansion and growth and going and going and going, that sometimes when I have this constriction periods, I feel like something is wrong with me. Like, why am I uninspired? Like, I'm so dull. I have nothing to offer. Like, it's so hard to take that, but like really take it without judging and just breathe and like do it, like, just live it, live through it. And even the consciously, I know it's a cycle, Kasia. It happened, last cycle and the cycle before. It's still like so hard on the, I think that's my like surprise on the body level. It's, I don't even think like, I think about it, but even in my body, I feel this like insecurity and this anxiety and like, what if I don't earn money again? Or, like, what if I take a break from my channel and I don't record anything and then suddenly nobody buys readings, and it's constant chatter. But also in the body, I feel this sense of, so yeah, it's interesting that, and it's, as you said, like it's coming back every cycle. I have an amazing month, and then it's constriction and I'm already. So I think conscious work with the moon gives you probably a little bit more of this sense of like breath. And I don't know, but I'm kind of disappointed, like I'm a woman. I consider myself a woman. I'm an astrologer. I'm really intuitive. I know about the moon. I know about the moon cycles. I follow them, and I still constantly do the same. Like how strong the pull of that linear world we live in is. And that's why I wanted to also ask you, that's why this question was kind of like, is it easy to follow a different time? Because it's, to me, it seems like it's not easy. Like it's hard. It's hard to do that because it doesn't fit, you know, like you kind of have to really go against the grain. And I think since you've done it for so many years, like it evolves.
It is breaking free of that, the timeline, of the straight line, of the boxes and the like very measured. So in some ways it is more fluid, and it does ask for more of that trust of, I have to trust this is going to come back around. And also something that you mentioned, that working in a conscious way, knowing that the moon also represents the subconscious of what's not known, of what is kind of buried or hidden or mysterious. And so working with the moon in the conscious way, it brings up a lot. And I can say, you know, 5 years later, there's some things where I'm like, I'm finally getting the hang of this pattern about myself, of here it is again. And for me, you know, what you described too, for me, sometimes it's like the bottom just falls out, and all the good ideas I thought that were like so inspired, there's just no, you know, the things that feel like they just fall flat. And so to learn then not to make a long story and carry that out and think it's going to last forever, because it will shift. And so having, you know, naming what all those phases are, it really becomes a relationship. And that's one of, as I started going deeper with the teachings for myself, and then wanting to share just the work of that lunar guide and moon guide work, is how do we have a relationship that's intimate? So that intimacy with the moon that then makes that bridge for the intimacy with ourself. So we can almost like watch ourselves in the moon, in the way that the moon is like watching and watching over and visiting, you know, all the skies just on this journey. How it is we can also just, you know, it's that mindfulness practice of watching the self. And then being able to see, oh, here I go again. And do I need to course correct?
Yeah.
Am I going down? You know, often this really came from the patterns of burnout that I had and that I was experiencing, that I thought I could keep going with.
Yeah, so actually let's start there.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, you know, as I said, like I'm fiery, airy, so I always consider myself like kind of less feminine. I'm joking, but like, you know, usually water and earth, like that's considered like that kind of receptive, right? The kind of, we call it in astrology even passive. It's stupid, but it doesn't really fit. But you know what I mean? It's more receptive. It's more kind of considered, more feminine. So I was wondering if you were always drawn to the moon, if you always felt this, you know, this the pull, that magnetism that moon has, or was it a point at your life when you actually, because you mentioned burnout, so I'm just thinking, oh, maybe you also had a bit of a corpo going in you, even though we're not corpo, but like, you know, like I'm just wondering. So can you tell me, like, how did it happen that the moon actually, boom, popped into your life?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, you know, the fire and the burnout, like that element, that's very solar. And so when we see, oh, we live in a very solar world, that's going to aggravate that almost no matter what. So it's, again, going against the grain to go against that. And it's not that it's, you know, it's not even in the duality of good and bad. It's like we need that solar and we need the lunar and we need all of it, right? That's the alchemy. So when I was younger, I was an athlete and I was a swimmer. Short distance, like sprinting, you know, I want to go like short sprints. So I was a swimmer growing up, and I ended up coaching the swim team. And the mascot was Solar Man, because we live in a place that was Sun Valley. So the mascot was Solar Man. So one year I was actually the mascot, and I got to dress up with the cape and the everything and be Solar Man. And so I laugh when I think back that there I was, like, like run, dive off the board and like swim, and the whole team, like kids from 8 years old to, 8 to 18, chanting solar, 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 like that. That is the imprint. Like that was an imprint from my childhood, my whole growing up swimming on Sun Valley.
That's very...
And so I think partly with those energies and what you mentioned about like water and earth being passive signs, and that passive and active. And my interpretation as a young person was active is better and passive is bad. So, and I was getting these, messages from the outside as well. And so I was like, well, then I'm going to do the active thing, which seems to be the more solar or the more masculine seeming. And I remember finding a necklace of the yin yang symbol, and also the yin being passive. And to me, the interpretation was that that's weak. And so that equals that feminine is weak. And so for a lot of my teen years, that kind of suppression of the feminine and not an embracing and not at all. And so I've had to find that for myself, and kind of deprogram my own thinking around that. So yeah, I think it is something too that I like to accomplish things. I like to make things. I like to do things. I like to, create. And so that being productive, that producing, that earth like need for production, that's something that I've had to work with too, is within it. Really, the moon came to me in a big way with the initiation into motherhood. Because then no longer could I do my regular antics of, I'll just create all night because that's exciting, and then, paint all night or whatever it was. I couldn't do that anymore. And I tried, because that was just the way that I knew. And that was the burning the candle at both ends and not respecting the night, the yin, the rest, the moon. It was trying to override that. And so it's taken many years just in my own life, in my own body, in my system. I see myself go to that pattern. And I say, there I am, I'm going to that pattern. I know what happens with that pattern. So the first year that I was tracking in the moon calendar, that I knew I needed it. I needed it because I had to learn how to get out of the solar overproductive, like be the mom, have 4 part-time jobs, like cook the meals for the family, and then stay up at night and create things. Because I'm like, if I'm not creating, then I'm dying. And I'm dead. Like, what's the point if I'm not creating something? So yeah, but that first year, one of the things is my our family car, that I'd have a dead battery every other week. The battery would die, and so my car, the vehicle, was acting up and showing these signs of like, there's no source of energy and power to plug into. What and I saw that as a mirror, because I look at all the things around me as mirrors. So I just would mark that down in my calendar, and then I'd see, wow, it's actually happening a lot. I think like what you said, sometimes we lose that plot of like, oh, it happened before, but now I had this almost like this data on myself, my experience, to really look at, and it becomes that mirror, that reflection.
I love that, because you're right. Like we often, like consciously or unconsciously, forget how often or how many times that happened before. And when you see it, even if it's in little symbols, or like you kind of, you can you can use the solar then to actually give you a good feedback. Hey, this is a fact, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 17. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that analogy to, the battery and like how your own battery needed recharging and your car is like dying every time you move. So, okay, if people don't know, can you show the calendar again? Because this is the moon is my calendar, and this is the calendar and journal kind of in one. So this is the 2020 edition, and you printing them every year since 2014.
So 2014, and I just chose the new moon that's closest to the December solstice. So sometimes it comes out late November, sometimes early or mid-December. So it's that. So there's kind of a last, because the moon, right? The moon doesn't fit into the boxes, and so within a circle and a cycle, any starting point is kind of arbitrary. Where does something actually start? And so choosing the new moon as a starting point, choosing in the northern hemisphere at least, the winter solstice as a starting point of beginning to, the light beginning to return. So in the calendar and journal, there's 6 pages for each cycle, and I'll show the one that's not filled out. So this is the page for the moon mandala, and so it has a container there to really put whatever into the container. And some people will use tarot or oracle decks to then kind of guide what goes in here. But I was finding a lot of people were leaving it blank because they thought that they weren't an artist, and so anyway, that's how the whole Moon Mandala collective came to be, was for me choosing themes and a process for creating mandalas that people could be a part of and be inspired and get ideas to create their own. And not about copying mine, but it's kind of like, how do you take an idea and then make it your own?
Yes.
And so connected to...
Sorry, April, like about the mandalas, like you don't have to be an artist, but basically new moon mandala, so you would need to know what sign the moon is in. Does it influence your kind of take on it, or is it just new moon and what you feel around this at this particular moment, and then you put whatever images you kind of feel drawn to into the new moon mandala? That's how you would suggest that people do that?
At the real core of it is whatever goes into the circle, which could be even a word, considering it like this sacred space in a container for what am I drawing into my life? Like and so it could even just be like the feeling of colors or images or collage, or even just words, whatever it may be, where it's like, this is where the attention is really focusing and charging that, sort of activating that. When the first maybe even 3 calendars, I didn't even follow astrology. It was with the moon, because the moon is changing signs every 2.5 days. I was like, I can't even get my car to start. How am I going to even know what sign the moon is in? This is not helpful. Maybe it would have been. I don't know if I would know. It came later, and there was the curiosity, and I took it all with a grain of salt. I was like, really, is it really a different if the full moon is in Taurus? Like, what is that? Because I don't think I just seeing it as a symbolic language. So now, because that's something that I've added into my practice, it's something that I share and I draw from the themes, but also seasonally, which astrology, Western astrology, it is a seasonally based system.
Yeah. So before you go further with the calendar, why did you make your own calendar? What was wrong with all the other lunar calendars that, a lot of us use? They square mostly, but like what made you go, I need to make my own and it's different. Okay, maybe show the one page, like how it looks before
Oh
you
yeah.
answer, just for people who've never seen it, maybe they can. So this is what that's what you made. It kind of looks a little bit like astrological
Right.
chart also, right?
Yeah, which goes in a different direction. So that's even the choice of does it go clockwise or counterclockwise?
True.
That's even making a choice there. And I decided with counterclockwise because that's how we see the even though it's an illusion, that movement of the sun and moon and planets and stars moving.
Well, but in astrological chart, you have the houses that go
The other way. Yeah.
anti-clockwise, but then the planets
They do. The
go
planets go clockwise.
counterclockwise as well.
And I think they move. I was looking at the other
Like
day. They
this.
move.
Yeah, if I have like Mars, let's say now like Mars is retrograding, so it's going clockwise. But when it's going to go forward in direct motion, it's going to go counterclockwise as well. So it's interesting, but counterclockwise. I had to think about it for a while. I'm like, how do I move? And the ascendant goes like, yeah, but it does get confusing because I think like, yeah, if you go of how ascendant, like if you calculate the chart, it would go clockwise, but like when actually it's calculated and how the planets move, it's counterclockwise, yeah. So
Yeah.
Luna, in cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were looking at all those calendars and you were like, no.
I couldn't find what I was looking for. And there were some that were, and I just found this work again now, like almost 10 years later. I used to find that circle wheel and then write in dates around the edge. But then after one or two cycles, I would not write the dates in, and then the practice would go away. And I was just talking with somebody yesterday who was like, I just like it that you put the dates in there so I don't have to do that part and it's already done. And so I can just use the tool rather than,
I agree. I
want to create my own.
I think I know which one you're talking about, the previous one without dates. And I also started and then just never continued after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember I made a watercolor of what I was thinking. And then I sat down with my husband, who is sort of self-taught in design, and he helped to translate my ideas that were very like fluid, intuitive, maybe this, and he was like, just tell me what to do. I'm like, I'm not sure. We have to explore and sort of find that. So that was an interesting process too, of just creating that original design.
I love that because the solar and the lunar met, and I think what you mentioned, it's really important.
Sometimes it's like sometimes it's like this and sometimes it's like this.
Of course, but I sometimes find that the language is so limiting, the solar, the lunar, the feminine, the masculine, the passive, it's like, yeah, we do want the alchemy, right? We do want the alchemy. So yeah, okay, sorry, I just had to butt in because I love that he helped you and you're so lunar and intuitive and you had all this watercolor vision and he's like, well, we have to make something out of it.
And I'm so grateful because he's so precise with the margins. So everything was, for me, I'd be like, I would eyeball it and say, it looks good, just eyeball. And he would, everything is like to the detail. And yeah, so this is actually the first year that I'm working with a designer in Australia who does graphic design to have support with the design. My husband works a full-time job and we were doing this. We were staying up after the whole workday and I was teaching at a school and, it took a long time to recover from that because it was to birth it. It was like all of the stages of gestation, everything and birthing it. It was all compressed the first year in 1 month.
Wow.
And so it came through like a lot of things, I think, for me in the creative process, and you might have this too. When it comes through, it's like, it's quick, it's lightning, you can't even stop to think because it's just, really coming through at high speed. So that happened the first year. And then after the first year, it was like, I guess then we're going to do this again. And at that point, it's very much evolved over the process. But the other calendars, a lot of them, like the Wee Moon calendar, when I was first getting it, I couldn't even decipher any of the glyphs anyway. So I'm like, I don't even know what this is talking about. And it's still linear. Now I can decipher, and it's a reference, and I get it every year as well. But I love calendars, and I love like school supplies and back to school. And I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. And so I would make my own planners and my own teacher calendar planners. And I love that, this relationship with time of like, what are we going to do in this time together?
So it kind of translated to your love for the moon and to your love, this initiation through motherhood and that need for, like what Jessica Zinchuk says, like the sacred pause. I love that, how she coined it. So that's beautiful. So the calendar comes to life in 2014, and then since then every year, it grows, you print more, and so more and more people are interested.
Yeah, it multiplied. It's multiplying, and then it makes me have that question of what's the capacity of. 2 years ago, I had them shipped out of a warehouse, and then I decided to kind of bring it back in-house. And this year, so it's kind of like at the seams of what's the capacity. And also my dear moon sister and colleague and friend, Sita Davis, she has been, almost like the midwife, and has supported and contributed and collaborated and just been a part of our personal practice, which it came from meeting on the new moon. And she translates it into Spanish. So this is the 3rd year that it's translated into Spanish and distributed in both. It's international, like all of the distribution is international. And so it's that point of that growing of like, how do the seeds and the work that's grown and spreading and blooming and all over, how to hold the space for all of that.
It's always such a it's beautiful, this kind of always that alchemy, because when you a receiver of the calendar, you think, oh, she created the calendar, it's beautiful, right? But then when you're creating it, then you have to take into consideration also what you just said, the warehouse, who is going to post it, where am I going to help, keep the copies, and the posting stuff, it takes so much energy, I used to create those ones, and every time posting, it was just, I didn't like posting. It was just tiring. It was not something that's, I signed up to do. I knew you had to do it, but it's another thing, especially when you post in big quantities, like sometimes Kickstarters, when people suddenly have to post thousands of decks within few weeks, you just posting and packing and posting. It's a lot of things that come behind the scenes. So tell us a little bit more of how to use it. By the way, I want everyone to know that you actually have a lot of videos on how to use the calendar, on many different interesting videos with about meditation and following the lunar cycles and certain signs, moon in certain signs and so on, and creative videos as well, how to make the mandalas and stuff like this. So I'm going to link to the videos in the description box for people to follow, but maybe if you can just briefly tell us how to use this calendar, what's the difference with the other ones, and how do you actually use it if you're totally a beginner, let's say, you don't know anything, like you were in the beginning, totally I don't know what the glyphs are, I don't know the signs, I can see the moon in the sky and that's it.
I'll say, thanks for mentioning the videos. I'll say when I first created, when this was first, it was before I was on Instagram and maybe just starting, I had a lot of fear of being seen. I had a lot of fear of making videos of myself, I think because of part of it, just that own self-judgment of like, this isn't good enough. All of that I am still working through, but a lot of it was practice, and a lot of it is really just the beautiful, the reception and the beautiful support that's there to be able to share with our voices and so they're mostly on Vimeo because part of me is like, oh, YouTube is too exposed, it's too, and then someone recently was like, you need to have a YouTube channel to share more of this. If you really wanted to reach people, don't stop that flow so that it can reach people. So it's trusting in that, the value and the worth of it too.
Yeah. And I think you can
so
probably transport somehow the videos from Vimeo to YouTube. You've got them. So yeah, I would totally say the same. And I totally hear you. Like I go through this all the time. Oh my God, like what else? I don't have anything to say. I don't know. But yeah, it cycles. So totally hear you. And I think once you did Vimeo, you can do YouTube. It doesn't really matter.
I mean, I have one. I just delete things off of it. It's there. The container's there.
Yeah.
And then I have hundreds more that are private, for all the different courses that I've taught. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot more to share. So starting like I think having to really see that we've been programmed with the linear way of thinking. That is just, it's not that it's a barrier or a block, it's a different way of seeing and experiencing and feeling about time. So that the calendar, there is the mandala, which, from that, I created the wall calendar, which has artwork on it just to kind of, to see the circle. This is more of a personal practice. It's like a snapshot. It's not a whole journal. Some people have asked like, oh, can there be more pages in it? And they're like, this has to be short and sweet for me. It can't be like, I have other journals where I go on and on, but this is like short and sweet. So there's one page for seeds of intention. And there's 4 little dots, and it's really up to your imagination. You can do what you want with those. I think for people who want more guidance, you could choose, I've done different things, whether it's for, if you have an intention and there's certain actions or activities or practices that you want to do in the lunar cycle to track those things. Whether it's, I'm going to go into nature, I'm going to, meditate in the morning or the evening, have a practice. I'm going to reach out to other people, like I'm going to make an effort to connect, and whatever it might be. And I'm going to take my vitamins. Things that you want to do, right? To have those, that's becomes very specific. There's one cycle where I listed all of the supplements, and I was like, this cycle, I'm just going to focus on taking supplements, and I will feel accomplished because I am doing the basic. That look like this. My process is very nonlinear. So just writing, a lot. Some of it can be like notes to self, or just very clearly like the intention for the cycle. And there's different practices to go through to kind of access that, and tarot and having other tools can support that. Yeah. Some people will draw an oracle card for each of the 4 main phases and put that here just as some guidance. So it's a container, but it's not prescribed. And that's kind of how I work and teach. And
I like it also with the, that you include, because I'm a tarot channel, and I think a lot of people use cards, oracles, or tarot, and I think it's a beautiful way to include working with cards and with the moon. And I very often do, and I know that most of people who use tarot, we have new moon spread and full moon spreads, and so like it's kind of like common, like we do that. We use cards to access this information, and sometimes you have a clear intention, and that's beautiful. Sometimes you're kind of vague about it, and I think cards can work lovely as a tool to help you maybe narrow it, or, kind of access it a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And then you get to see and have that information for yourself, to reflect back on, because we're coming up on the full moon in Taurus, then to have, what was I doing on the new moon in Taurus? What were the themes? If I pulled cards, what were the cards? To then have this reference point to kind of cross reference. And then this is really the heart of the calendar, the circular calendar. And it starts at the new moon at the top, and it goes clockwise to the first quarter, and the full moon, the last quarter, and then the last day of the cycle. So the 4 main phases have the astrological symbol there, as that kind of the checkpoints. And there's an inner cycle here, and some people will divide up the space. You can kind of divide it up and use it differently in terms of tracking and what to put in here, because it is a smaller space. Some people will write words, but in the front there's symbols, like suggested symbols that you could. Someone actually asked if I would make stickers. I was like, I would love to make stickers. That's a whole other project. If anyone listening wants to help me make stickers, that would be awesome. To have the symbols. Even just noticing, is my energy feeling like it's going inward? Just doing that check, that kind of body check, the energy check, what's my mental state, where are my emotions, and just making note. Am I going inward, or am I feeling, as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling like way more extroverted than other times of the cycle. The inner cycle may also, for people who do menstruate, who bleed, having almost like we talked about those 2 clockwise and counterclockwise, there can be other cycles and other influences. So what I see is that in the center, if I just mark for me and to see where I'm bleeding, then I see how this moves around. For me, it moves around the circle. And I've noticed that for whatever reason, my body likes to bleed with the moon in Scorpio. So I would not have known that if I would have thought maybe it was just a little more random. Not random, but because it shifts. And then I started looking and seeing, like, it's mostly around the Scorpio moon. So every 6 months, it's going from when full moon in Scorpio to 6 months later is new moon. So just noticing that. And then I'll put the hours of sleep and any practices that I'm doing, just to note that down, to see whenever there's any conflict or struggle or inner conflict or outer conflict, just noticing that as well, and having that practice of I wonder what's going on, having the curiosity really to see. And it's a container and this mirror that then reflects back of like, what am I seeing? Where am I putting my energy? I think in the beginning, myself and a lot of people will chart everything, like put all kinds of things and think, well, what should I be paying attention to? And that's part of the process, and that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because I think a lot of people might go, oh, do I have to put, I know you don't have to, but do I put everything on there? Is it too much? Am I going to do it for 1 month and then forget about it? I think it probably is commitment as well, but I think it's kind of curious maybe to allow yourself at least a few months to do the practice, because I think that gives you the things, that gives you the feedback, that gives you that reflective quality back, and to see things that maybe you kind of think you're seeing, but you're not really truly paying attention. And that also tells you, I think, to slow down, even, but when I think of putting this, I'm going to start working with your calendar from this year. I'll let you know how it goes, but, I was looking at the electronic version as well, and I was just thinking, yeah, wow, I'd have to you have to pay attention to yourself. It's like, you know, it's beautiful practice for this. I always think of this like bringing that spirit to matter, you know, for this, again, this alchemy, when you're conscious with your mind, but you are actually tracking something that kind of, you know, life rolls by itself, like you can't control certain things. And yeah, it's interesting process. I think it's beautiful. And I think alchemy just fits this work a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And this, for 2021, the cover image that Sita Davis designed with the watercolor, it's the first year that we've put the sun and the moon on the cover, because it's always been the moon, the moon, the moon, the moon, you know, or just other symbol, whatever. But this cover intentionally has like, we need both, we have both. And so it has this kind of the weaving with the solar and the lunar.
Oh, that's lovely. And then also the mandalas from Leti. It's a full-on like VIP version, the 2021.
I know. Well, every year I say like, okay, I'm just going to keep it the same. Just change the dates. And then like, it's good. Just change the dates. It never works that way. It's always a process, and it's always better because of it. And it's always like, oh, 2 more months of working on it because of it also. So this year is VIP all around. Like
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else?
Then so this is this cycle for me. There's a little space that has the new to first quarter and then full moon and last quarter. So it is just very much like a snapshot. Like, you know, you could write a haiku. You could have 1 month is like, I'm going to write haikus this month and do that. 1 month could be like, I'm going to have a gratitude practice. I'm going to try that. I'm going to write down what my dreams are. You know, somebody, I saw her calendar and she kind of writes it. She just uses it as her to do, like a couple important things that she's doing that day. And I'll do just a combination, you know. Yeah, I've decided on something you said, reminded me this, of having a growth practice and a death practice, of how am I focusing on like, where am I challenging myself in the growth practice, and how am I really allowing that space for the grieving and the death practice of like what needs to shed and go. So just kind of make new things come along, and so I make notes of that. Yeah, little things that kind of surprise me, or know that later on something else is going to develop from it, and I'm going to want a reference to see like, what was that, you know, what was that thing that seemed out of the blue, but I don't know what it means now, but I know later.
I also think because of how you designed it, even pulling a card a day for the moon phase and just seeing it how it is, because you know, if I put it in my calendar, let's say, like I won't get the same visual because I would have to like flip through it to see, and you don't like get hit with this sometimes, you know, you look at this for 2 pages and you see, oh my god, I had like devil cut 5 times this month, or you know, and you can see like around what moon phases and what signs, and you can go deep with that. So again, a little tarot, boom. But yeah, it's lovely how it's just positioned, because I think it's easy to see the stalker or something.
When you see the whole cycle laid out. And I think something else that you can start to see is that, you know, between the phases, there's not the same amount of days and moons. And every single, and that's, you know, part of the labor that goes into it. Like this is the maximum between first quarter is 9. I think it fluctuates, I think, between 6 and 9. So every cycle really is different, and there's fluctuation, and yet there's a rhythm to it that, you know, you can even just start to see. So for somebody who's new and using this as a tool for like changing a perception of time, seeing it laid out this way, it's maybe not familiar, but it's working it's coming through, and it's working just like through visually and connecting with our brain. And I feel like it is creating that alchemy and the integration of that solar and lunar and the right and left side, and the structure and the fluidity. of all of that. Yeah. Yeah. And it has eclipses in there too. And so that's another layer of noticing what are the themes that come up for me around eclipses. So that's been, yeah.
It would be good if you had a calendar from 18 years ago to see the
I
same
know.
eclipse couples coming back, in this big cycle. So that would
Yeah. Well, what is this? It'll be six years. Okay. So 12 more years.
well,
Yeah.
in Poland, I have this wall calendar, which a Polish lady does. Maybe, I don't know if Letty had it, like it's the, when the spiral opens up and like comes out of itself, and that's from like the winter solstice to summer solstice. It's somewhere in the middle, and then the energy, winds back in.
Yeah.
So now we're in this winding back to, and also, just the visual, but I agree with you, just the visual makes a big difference because of how you perceive it. Makes somehow, you connect to it. It makes sense. It kind of opens up new things. So yeah, it's also a great idea to like ask people to go and watch the moon and see how maybe nature changes. Like now I'm living, in Croatia for a while and watching the sea, the tides. And I haven't been here too long to kind of have a comparison. Would be nice to stay the whole year and like watch the moon and the signs and see what it does to it. But even the new moon, full moon, I could see like, so much water, and then kind of like, wow, look, it's kind of so flat suddenly. So it's wonderful to see it wherever you are, how the nature responds to the lunar cycles too.
Yeah. And so people who are, connected in that way, fishers and surfers and all of the waters like that, knowing. And so there are many people who have that and have that lived and ancestral knowing and experience of the cycles and of the waters and all of that. And I think for me, there was this longing of there's some missing piece. There's something that like, I think so much started to come together and make sense in connecting with the lunar cycle of all the layers of the that expansion, that breath, that contraction, and knowing that both of those are needed. Even if the contraction feels tight or it feels like something's wrong, is like that has to happen even for our breath and our heartbeat. If everything pulses in that way, and the tides pulse in that way. And it's being guided by the moon and that listening and that deep listening in nature. It is like finding a way home. It is like finding a way to locate ourselves and to connect with these beautiful rhythms of the earth. That my feeling and my understanding is like when we override those in ourself and how those rhythms are overridden for the earth, the suffering that comes from that, the suffering, the destruction, the breakdown that comes from overriding the cycles. So.
And I love what you said about, that not many people are kind of looking at it this way, but I think we all have like DNA knowledge of doing this at some point through our ancestors, because I think we were, as humans, much more connected to lunar time at some point. And I think it somehow is the body memory, like we recognize it, we can reconnect if we want to. Yeah. That's maybe was this deep recognition that you also felt when, kind of you started doing it. You're like, wow, it somehow shifts the perception.
And I think for anyone who is, a visual learner, I'm very visual. I have to see things, but also kinesthetic and feel them and embody them, because any amount about reading about the lunar cycle, when it gets into astronomy, I appreciate it and I can access it more now. But in the beginning, trying to work it out in my mind would just give me a headache and I wouldn't. It like wouldn't stick. And so this practice of the embodying and connecting with the moon in nature, connecting with ourselves and the nature in ourselves, yeah, it's transformative.
Yeah, I think
And
when you make it personal, it's easier, first of all, to understand. You get it, you kind of know it. Yeah.
And that there isn't an expert, that you become the authority and you become the expert of, this is my experience with the moon. This is my experience of this particular full moon. And then knowing that and trusting that and building that intuition and that relationship and that connection. So we know it's true for us, because sometimes even with astrology, like I'll see something or read something and I have to really ask, like, is that really true for me now? And sometimes it is. And it's like, wow, these themes are, it helps in making sense of a lot of chaos. And also just that reminder of the questioning of, well, what is true for me now in this moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we spoke a little bit before we pressed recording, of like how a lot of us like to be told what to do and have the, that's kind of very solar maybe in the sense of like, I give you points.
Checklist.
Do this, like, yeah, take the list, and that's really what I'm finding also, sometimes so frustrating and confusing when I'm like, I know it's a cycle, and like coming back to this trust and like figuring out for myself yet again, it's always a little bit different. Sometimes it's more scary or whatever, sometimes less, sometimes more emotional, sometimes less, but you do see yourself kind of seeing yourself repeating certain things and learning for yourself. So yeah, it's definitely some form of commitment, and I think a willingness to do that and to observe yourself in connection to something that is also around you and you're surrounded with. So probably it's not for the weak-hearted. It's all for the passive ones, the lovely passive ones.
Yeah, it's self-study, it's self-study, and it continues to go deep. And there's many ways to do that and practice that. Just like with meditation, there's, all kinds of options, but just choosing something. And there are, since this calendar came out, there are many more. There's a lot more. And that I felt that, and I knew that. I'm like, this is coming. The moon is speaking to us. And the moon was like, you're not going to sleep just for this time. So you get this together, start this path, change directions, right? Because I was teaching a classroom teacher, and it's like, change directions, get your act together, get yourself together, get a rhythm. And the moon, I mean, that's like, get a rhythm, know our rhythms. Those rhythms shift and are seasonal. And so yeah, there's many cycles within cycles, and that, especially living a creative life of all of the kinds of ups and downs that come along with that, it can be a lot to navigate. So yeah, it's sometimes interesting to think, having an anchor, the moon going through so many changes, and yet really anchoring. Anchoring.
So true. We will have to slowly wind up. I wanted to ask also about our, like, for example, right now we caught up, I'm checking on my moon calendar. I know it's like the first quarter moon, and it's the moon in Aquarius. If you mostly follow from the new moon to full moon, but like the full moon of the same sign, or how do you like, do you do like new moon intention, the seeds of intention, just for this lunation? Because you mentioned something that you sometimes go from new moon in Taurus to full moon in Taurus, but that wouldn't be the same lunation, it would be longer.
Yeah, it's about the 6 cycles. I look to see, if you look 6 back, so the full moon in Taurus coming up, looking back 6 cycles to when the new moon was in Taurus.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Which was, April 22nd. So if you have your calendar, and you have something to look at, April 22nd, looking back to that new moon.
22nd. I'm just thinking, like, what was I doing? 22nd.
And looking around, because a new moon or full moon is like, it's a moment in time. And it's also the kind of surrounding, the building up and the releasing from around that. Yeah. And then just looking and seeing.
I love that, because I think that's why those, how it's designed, it's really lovely to see, to the new moon and full moon. Because sometimes that, I think I was talking with Letty about it, that sometimes the new moon, that just the one cycle just seems like too short. Like I put my seeds, but like, oh my God, but it's like 29 days. Like what? Like I wanted, let's say, to develop something. Like it's not happening within the 29 days. Like there's no way. So I think that's also like a really lovely piece of information for people to kind of get it a little bit deeper, and that is a cycle, but it's not necessarily this kind of immediate cycle. So depending probably on what we're seeding or what we want. So if I just want to buy myself a red lipstick this cycle or a supplement, that's awesome. 29 days might be enough to do that. But if you want to, I don't know, create a school, or, like you have some long-term goal, like obviously it's not going to finish by the end of the cycle. That particular
undercurrents, right? Because sometimes there are those undercurrents that are there at work that are maybe just ready to come up, that they've been germinating so long that there's a readiness. And so that's the part of learning our own rhythms and patterns and cycles, is what am I demanding of myself to get this, like in 2 weeks from new moon to full moon, it's 2 weeks. What's kind of realistic and possible, and what's also just, it's there, it's being worked on, it's under the surface, there might be an undercurrent, that then the opportunity just has to open up and it comes through. Like with creating the calendar, I had wanted to create this. I had done other versions year before. Like these flags were kind of, I was going to make a calendar made out of flags. I was attempting all these different things that seemed like nothing was happening. Like 2 years of kind of playing around, nothing's happening. So 2 years of that. And then 1 month, like start to finish, like we're starting it, we're going, boom. And very quickly.
And it happened seems like within one cycle.
Yeah. It happened with one cycle. So there are some things where it's like, it's been there, feels like there's no progress. It feels like, there's nothing getting it off the ground. And then,
that's true actually. Yeah.
So, and we talked a little bit, and I know we're going to wrap up the, just how the moon cycles, it's like a gateway into studying the cycles of Venus. So the Venus cycles are on the wall calendar for reference, to be able to start to see what is Venus, where is Venus, and what is Venus doing within the lunar cycle. So bringing that connection of the sun, the moon, and Venus, all with I have one of the little cards from Leticia's, one of the mandalas that's in the calendar, to also have the Venus and sun and moon. So much alchemy.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. And also, April, I think you mentioned something about the Blue Moon giveaway. Do you want to just, before we finish, do you want to just say something about this? And also maybe, are the calendars on sale now, or are they still on pre-order? Maybe if you can just like wrap up a little bit of promotion, just to, if people want to buy the calendar, like what do they do? Don't come to me, people. Go to April. If you can just tell us, so maybe the giveaway first, and then where people can find the calendars.
There's a giveaway that's happening that will be, the winner will be drawn on the full moon in Taurus, which is a blue moon, on October 31st.
That's wonderful.
yeah, two pairs of wall calendars. So both Letty and I have a post on our Instagram feed. So if you go to The Moon is My Calendar, and Letty Luna with two L's, there's a post and it's very clear, Blue Moon giveaway, and there's instructions in there for entering.
I'm just going to mention that we pre-record, so the interview is going to go up on 28th of October, which still will get people some few days of chance to enter.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's, and then you can see kind of pictures, and there's a picture of the inside of the calendar, the cycle with the Venus, and it's color coded, which I'm very happy about. And Vivian, who's been doing with the design support, she even said something clicked for her when she color coded everything. All of a sudden, some of the cycles, it just made sense because of the elements of the signs and the color. So I hope other people have that experience as well. I want to just make it easy where you just see it and you're like, oh, it all comes together, you know, something clicking and seeing everything within a cycle, in a circle. And the calendars are available in the shop at themoonisemycalendar.com. And they are on pre-order in the sense of both of the calendars are at the printer. And so this is a self-published, like, you know, printed on really nice paper. I don't compromise any of the materials in the process. And they are, you know, it's a smaller batch. And so the pre-orders definitely help to fund the printing, which you all know, for anyone who's done that work, is like, it's a lot up front. This is later in the season from what they're used, you know, usually I have them and they're usually being sent, and it's 2020 and we're still in Mercury retrograde. And so I am breathing and staying calm and knowing that you come and, so yeah, they're available, and they have sold out every year. So I try to print more to meet that demand. And also, you know, yeah, so if you want one, get one. And there's bulk and wholesale also. There's some studios and shops that carry them. There's actually a shop in the UK. The little red tarot.
Oh, little red tarot. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Beth Maiden had them. I need to reach out to Beth. So that's an option, because I know internationally the shipping and customs and all of that
shipping kills it. It's just, yeah.
It doubles the cost. And so it's a so if anyone too who wants to be a part of international distribution.
Exactly. But I'm glad that Beth is stocking them, because a lot of people know this shop also, and most of Europe buys there. I think there is also the girl, I will link you with her, April Wasima. I think she's got a shop either in France or in Portugal, I'm not sure, but she sells oracle decks and also gets certain, I don't know if she stocks calendars, but I get you connected. Maybe she would be interested as well. She's lovely, and she's got a YouTube channel, and she's a healer as well. And yeah, so maybe that's another option, because I know that people buy decks from her as well in Europe. So anything to make it easier for my fellow Europeans.
And across the ocean. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Katya. This has been really fun and beautiful, and it's just exploring this. And thank you for the questions, and just that kind of curiosity of, how does this work? Is it hard? Is it, you know, how do you do this? Like, what is the shift and the change? And it's really, it can feel incremental, but it is a different way of experiencing life on Earth, that is aligned with cycles, aligned with lunar time, that can hopefully align and rebalance that relationship with the Earth and with these cycles of the Earth and with our bodies and all of the different cycles that we go through throughout a lifetime. So,
yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for being my guest. It was lovely to catch up and to just, like I was saying, I feel like I know you because I watched your videos and I kind of listened to you. So it was lovely to actually meet you in person. And yeah, we will be in touch anyway. And thank you so much for popping up. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope it was informative and inspiring. And you can find April. I will link your Instagram account and maybe the YouTube channel, since you're going to put more videos on it, right?
You know, when you say it out loud, sometimes when you say it out loud, it's like, oh, now it's going to happen.
So yeah, I think why not, you know, like Vimeo, YouTube, just doesn't matter. Just put it out there for people. I think it's really important work. And as you said, like it's picking up, like tarot and astrology and all these like disciplines are coming up to the surface more and more. And I think it's beautiful because they are cyclical. So it's lovely to just see a little bit differently and treat time a little bit differently. So thank you everyone for watching again. Thank you, April. And I see you the next time. Bye.